like to start with just by talking a little bit about SHA, about Social Hackers Academy, and then I'll give the microphone to Aris. So just a little bit about Social Hackers Academy. Social Hackers Academy is an organization that is mainly concerned with providing technical skills and education to people belonging to vulnerable groups, that is refugees, migrants, unemployed people from all around the world. We have been working with vulnerable groups mainly around Athens area here in Greece. Starting September 2020, we have now our own online educational platform, and we have moved from like on-site, on-campus lessons to online lessons. So we are now host classes and educate people from all around the world. Right now, the course that is the main course that is running is the front-end web development, and that's why we got the opportunity to have Aris here with us and introduce Angular. Currently, at the course, we are teaching React. Not because React, of course, is better, but because there's not enough time to cover like all the frameworks. So decided to go with React and have mentors or guest lectures and webinars such as this to introduce our students and, of course, our followers to other front-end frameworks. So that's it, a little bit about Social Hackers Academy. I'm currently the head of education at the organization. I think, Aris, you can introduce yourself and...
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Aristeidis Bampakos, but you can call me Aris because Aris is much shorter, especially for people that are not Greeks. I work as a front-end web developer at Plexers, a company here in Athens. And I used to be a JavaScript instructor in Social Hackers Academy from the very early stages of the very early days of the academy. I know Kostas back from 2017, and I'm very happy that the Social Hackers Academy gave this opportunity for me to come back again and teach something that I really love and I'm passionate about.
We're very happy to have you with us. Thank you for the introduction. I see a couple of messages. Rebecca is an experienced web developer interested in Angular from the USA. That's very interesting. Also a lot of messages from our attendees. Welcome, everyone. We're going to wait just a couple more minutes. I think we're going to have more people joining. We were having a discussion earlier with Aris about front-end frameworks and what's like the reality, let's say, out there with front-end frameworks competing with each other and people asking all the time, okay, which is the best one, which is like right now the most popular. But I will agree with Aris and John Papas that it's really nice to work with the framework or the technologies that you like and you feel comfortable with. Of course, there are times when you have to switch to a technology, let's say, that is used by a company or a client that you have to work with. So we have to be a little bit flexible in terms of switching from one framework to another, but also grasping the general concepts of these, especially the popular front-end frameworks. I think, Aris, they share like a lot of common ground. Like componentization and reusing, composability.
Especially Angular and Vue.js have many commons also in the syntax. For example, decorators. I think Vue.js has decorators also, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm not sure. Also, it's been a while since I worked with.
But if I would choose to learn a different framework other than Angular, I would choose React, not Vue. I don't know why. It intrigues me more.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I keep learning React. I've been working and teaching React for many years now, and I keep learning React every single day. Like also through the lessons, because we tend to dive deep. But there's always something new to learn, and also maybe a new pattern or a new technology, especially like the third-party plugins or like state management tools and probably HTTP libraries. They keep changing, and there's always the new hot thing. But I guess in Angular, it's a little bit more stable, right? Like you have everything taken care by Angular, and the only thing you have to keep up is just the versions of an update on Angular. You don't have to learn about this, new Redux or this new, I don't know, HTTP or something.
There is a Redux alternative which is called Ngrx, but it is a choice. Okay, I mean, state management is generally a choice. You're not obligated to use it. Personally, I don't like state management at all in my applications, but yeah, they give you all of the missing pieces at your disposal to create just your application. You want something you need HTTP. You use it directly. You don't need to install it separately or configure it. You want forms, you have it. So it's more. These times they call it platform and not framework, because it's more full-fledged, as you said. But I really love these discussions that we have now between the two frameworks, because under other circumstances, most of the people would say, "Oh, these two people should argue about the frameworks."
No, I think it's and it's also really interesting. Like even if you're passionate about the framework and if you work in a framework, it's also a good, let's say, experiment to work through other framework and get ideas or get inspired of the patterns. Like for example, you mentioned the decorators, which I've only seen and used in Angular. I think it's a TypeScript thing, right?
That's right.
And as far as I'm aware, this is the only time that I've used decorators in a JavaScript, like framework or library, which is something really, really cool. I learned about decorators through Java, and I found it like really, and I think Python also had but I never saw it, in the JavaScript world. And when I started with Angular, it all made sense, and it was like. I think it's really something that we should see more in like in JavaScript in general, or in TypeScript, I guess. It's like this sort of abstraction that's really beautiful and easy to use.
I think you can use types in React, right? With some sort of plugin or not?
Yeah. You can even add TypeScript. You can, yeah. So we have a couple of more messages, and people and developers I see joining on from all over the world. Some of them are into React and want to learn more about Angular. Okay, I think we can start with your presentation. Let me make you a co-host so that you can share your screen. So you can share your screen.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Feel free to post your questions in the Q&A panel, and we will have some time to answer the questions.
All right. So, as I have some things at the start of the introduction, I work as a front-end web developer at Plexer. I'm also a Google developer expert for the Angular framework. I co-organize an Angular here in Athens of Greece, which is about 2 or 3 months, but now with all the pandemic, we are only online. As I said before, I had the honor to be a JavaScript instructor in the Social Hackers Academy, and as you can see behind me from the flag, I'm a huge, very huge fan of Assassin's Creed games. But unfortunately, I have authored 2 books with packed publications. The first book, which is out right now, it is this one, which is called Learning Angular 3rd edition. And it is destined for beginners that want to get started with Angular framework. It guides you from creating your very first Angular application from scratch up to deploying it to a real web server. So it covers all these things that a beginner should know. And we are very close these days to publish my second book about Angular, which is called Angular Projects 2nd edition. And this book is destined for intermediate developers that want to dive deeper to a specific technology about Angular. For example, each chapter covers a different project that you can create with Angular. For example, one chapter is how to create a mobile application with Ionic and Angular. Another one is how to create a desktop application with Electron and Angular. Or there is another chapter that you can create a progressive web application with Angular. So each chapter is a different project that you can work on. I have put a link in this slide that leads you to a Google form where you can express your interest, and you will get notified when the book is finally released. We're very close to release date, so I think it will take about 1 week or 10 days. Or you can scan this QR code under the link for your convenience. So all these are, this book is available to pre-order. So let's proceed to the content of the workshop. What we are going to see today. Today, we will see a very, very brief introduction to the Angular framework, to the Angular platform. So I will show you some slides right at the beginning. It will take us about 20 minutes or something like this. If Kostas allows and you want, we can take some questions after the slides before proceeding to the actual demo, to the actual coding demo, where I will show you how to create an Angular application that communicates with a REST HTTP API. Some of you may know this. It is the REST countries API. And we will see how to connect to this API and get some data. Finally, if we will have time, and I promise that I will do my best to have time, I will show you how to deploy this application into GitHub pages. Excuse me. So let's get started. What is Angular actually? Well, some years ago, about 1, 2, or 3 years, we were saying that Angular is a JavaScript framework. It is. Right now, it is a JavaScript framework, but it has become so huge that we now say that it is a platform, a development platform that allows you to build scalable enterprise web applications using TypeScript. So Angular is written in TypeScript, and we as developers, as web developers, write Angular applications with TypeScript. The official documentation that you can take, read about Angular is this link, which is angular.io. And I suggest you to, whenever you have some problem or some question, to read first the official documentation and then all the other resources, because the official documentation is the source of the truth. Let's see some history about Angular. So on 2012, Ms. Cohevery, which was working in Google, created Angular JS 1.0. Now, you can see the logo of the Angular JS. This is not the Angular that we know, it's the Angular JS framework. It is written in JavaScript. Then in 2016, the Angular team at Google decided to rewrite the framework and rename it to just Angular. So on 2016, we have the Angular 2.0, which also has a different logo. So when we refer to the Angular JS 1.0, we just say Angular JS and we use this logo. And when we want to say the new Angular, we say Angular, no version, we don't mention any version, and I will explain to you why. And we use this logo. Now, we don't mention any version numbers after Angular JS because Angular follows semantic versioning. So they have, they're saying that they release a new major, they cut a new major release every 6 months. Currently, we are at Angular version 12. So when we want to refer to Angular, we don't need to mention the version number because it changes every 6 months. We just say Angular. And if we want to refer to the old Angular, to the 1.0, we just say Angular JS. I hope that is clear because many people confuses these two things. And they also confuse also the logos. So please pay attention to the logos when you use it, if you use it. Right. Why should someone choose Angular? Angular has 3 main pillars. The first one is that it is cross-platform. The second is that it is very easy to onboard someone to the framework and start creating new applications. And the third one is the incredible tooling that it has. It automates most of the development tasks. And so you, as a developer, you don't need to take care of configuration, configuring a server or configuring your environment. The Angular tooling does it all for you. You just do what you like to do, coding, creating awesome applications, right? Let's see each of these pillars separately. So the first pillar is the cross-platform. We say that Angular is cross-platform, but it is not actually by its own. It's the community that makes it cross-platform. The community contains many integrations with libraries. They have created many popular libraries that integrate with each of a different platform or environment. For example, we have the Angular Universal. Excuse me. We have the Angular Universal, which is allows you to run Angular applications in the server. Okay. And when we say the server, we mean server side. The server creates the HTML for us. The client does a very little job to display the Angular application. For desktop applications, we have the Angular PWA, or in other words, Angular Service Worker. This library allows you to create Angular applications that can be installable and customized and look like a desktop application. And finally, for the mobile platform, we have two libraries, the Ionic library and the native script, where the Ionic is more of a web view, we can say. For example, you write your code in Angular and it compiles to a native executable. And the native script, I think they have their own way of writing code and they compile to native. So this is all about why we say that Angular is cross-platform. Remember, it isn't cross-platform by its own, it's the community that enables this cross-platformability. Secondly, we have the easy onboarding. For example, when someone wants to start creating a new Angular application, it is very easy to start. Why? Because there is a vast collection of distinct libraries that are building inside the framework. For example, if we want to create an Angular application and we want to use forms, then we just import this npm library. It is already installed in our application, but until we use it, it will not be in our final bundle. If we want to use it, we just import it in our application, and then we can start creating forms. We want HTTP. Do we want to communicate with an HTTP endpoint? Then we can use the built-in HTTP client that provides us a wrapper over all HTTP methods. For example, get, post, put, and delete. It is a fully fledged HTTP client. Again, in this case, if you don't want to use it, that's okay. If you want to use it, it's there. You just import it. You don't need to install anything. We also have the Angular router, which is responsible for managing navigations inside our application. And finally, the Angular team has created a component UI library called Angular Material that we can also use for our user interface. Now, these 4 libraries are just a portion of what libraries we have what libraries that are installed when we create a new Angular application, right? If you go to the angular.io/presskit, you will see all these icons that I have shown to you until now, and you can see which library is which icon. And the third pillar is the tooling. Now, the tooling is the most important part in an Angular application because it makes the life of the developer easier. You just need to write your application code, nothing else. You don't need to configure a web server. You don't need to configure your build pipeline, your test pipeline, nothing. Angular tooling takes care of all of it for you. So we have 2 main tools. The first one is the Angular CLI. It is a command line interface for Angular projects, and we can install it using the npm install command. And we want to install it globally so that it is available in our computer everywhere, and we can start creating new Angular applications right away. Now, the Angular CLI has a lot of useful commands. There is a command for building your application, for testing, for serving, of course, your application, for debugging, and for deploying. Yeah, I mean, these 4 that I mentioned are some of them. There are a lot of it. The most important command of this is the update. For example, you have an Angular application, right? And you are in version 6. I hope you're not in 6 because 6 is very old, right? We all need to update our applications. We need to take care of this. So you are in 6 and you want to go to Angular 12. You want to upgrade it to Angular 12. You just run ng update, and the Angular CLI will take care of all the changes in your code base to update your application into Angular 12. This update command that I mentioned has a task called migrations. So the Angular CLI takes care of all of the changes that in other way you should make manually. So what's better? I mean, you can go from 6 to 12 or for a very old version in no time. recently, we upgraded our Angular application at work, which is a big application, I would say, from 11 to 12 in 10 minutes. And we were up and running in 10 minutes. So Angular CLI, as you can understand, it's a very powerful tool that we all must use. For example, I cannot imagine someone developing Angular applications without the CLI. For example, by using the Webpack. The second tool, which is the most recent one, is the Angular Dev Tools. It is a Chrome extension that you can install and allows you to debug and profile your Angular applications. It's like the Chrome Dev Tools that we have for standard web applications. This is a new one. It was announced later the previous month. And you can check it out by clicking on the link of the slides. All right, Aris. Let's say that you have convinced me to use Angular. Is there anyone else that uses Angular except me? Of course. There is a website that is called madewithangular.com that you can go and check out who uses Angular. There are most of the Google applications, Google websites, Google applications, Google web apps use Angular. For example, inside Google, more than 2,000 projects use the Angular framework. So we know that when we get a new version of the Angular, it has already been tested in 2,000 applications in-house of Google. Also, more than 1.5 million developers, Angular developers worldwide, use the Angular framework. And these are statistics that are taken from the visits in angular.io. So if you want, you can go to this website and check out also other companies that use Angular. Xbox, Sony PlayStation, all these.
Aris, excuse me, do you have a link to the slides?
I haven't uploaded them yet.
Okay. Go ahead, please.
So let's see the main pieces of an Angular application. There are three: the component, the module, and the service. Let's see first the component. The component is the basic building block of an Angular application. And what it does, it controls and represents a specific part of your web page, which is called view. So if you see a list of products, this is a component. If you see a shopping cart, this is a component. If you see the Google search form, this is a component. So it concerns with the presentational logic of our application, what we can see, not what it does underneath. Okay, if you want, for example, to change the background color from red to white when a Boolean is true or false, then this is presentational logic. You will write it inside your component. And they are organized into a tree representation. For example, in the top level tree of the tree, there is the main component, which we call app component by convention. And all other components are connected from the app component down. Each component has a public API that other components can use to communicate between them. Let's say by passing properties in and out of components. So the takeaway from this slide is to always remember that the component is the basic building block of an Angular application, not the module, because you may have seen that the module is the main one. No. What's the module? The module is a specific block of a single piece of functionality. It represents a specific application feature. For example, you have an ordering mechanism in your application. This is a module. You have a customer's management mechanism in your application. This is a module. So a specific application domain or a user workflow we can say that this is a module. Generally, my preference is that to think of modules as links on a web page. For example, if you go to a web page, a personal website, and you see contact us, products, our team, for example, I would think of them as separate modules. Each link would be a separate module. And modules, what are their tasks? To contain components, to group components under a single block of functionality. For example, the customers module will have all functionality, all components that are customer specific. The ordering module will have all components that are specific for ordering, and go on, and continues like this. So a module can contain components that have similar functionality, of course, or other modules. And these modules can communicate between each other. For example, the ordering module has a component that places an order. What does it need? It needs customers. So it needs to communicate through this public interface with the customers module. So the main takeaway of this slide is that modules are mostly for grouping similar functionality, aka components, together. And the last one is the service. The service is responsible for handling complex tasks. It is the business logic of our application. For example, you want to communicate with an HTTP API. This is the job of a service. The service will go and make the request to the HTTP to get the actual data, but the service is delegated by components to do this task. For example, if the ordering component wants to get the available balance of a customer, then it will use a service to communicate that this service will communicate with HTTP to get the balance of the customer. So this is the business logic of our application. Angular has a powerful mechanism which is called dependency injection mechanism, or Angular DI. We will see how it works, and it actually eliminates all the fuss that we would do to create a service. For example, you may have seen the problem when you want to create the problem in some coding websites where you want to create a car class and you want to pass a constructor of tire, a constructor of I don't remember the word now. Yeah, I guess you got me. So this dependency injection mechanism actually is concerned with creating services. We don't need to do anything as developers to create services. We just ask another artifact of the Angular framework to create a service for us. We don't do, for example, if we want to create a new order, we don't write new order. We just say, I want the order service to create a new order. We will see more later. I don't want to confuse right now. The main takeaway from here is that services are always delegated from other components when the component wants to make a complex task, for example, communicating with an HTTP. So the last thing that I would like to say, which is the last slide, I think, it's the Angular decorators. Everything in Angular is a class, a JavaScript class, right? So if Angular sees something like this, export class app component and a variable inside, it says, okay, it's a class. I don't know what to do with this class. I want you, developer, to mark it in some way so that I know what it is. Is it a component? Is it a service? Is it a module? So Angular does not understand raw classes. It needs decorators. The decorator is this word here with the @ symbol and the name component, the word component. @ component means that the class beneath is a component. There is a decorator for module, which is called @module. Also, there's another decorator for service, which is called @injectable. We'll see later in the practice. So you must always remember that everything in Angular is classes, but you need to decorate the class with the appropriate decorator so that Angular can understand what you're creating. Are you creating a component? Use the @component. Are you creating a service? Use the appropriate decorator. So now the theoretical part has ended. And before going through the coding session, I would like to say to you that the prerequisites for running all the code that I will show to you is that you need to have any LTS version of Node.js installed, any NPM version, preferably the one that comes bundled with Node.js, and Visual Studio Code preferably, but you can use any other editor. But Visual Studio Code has better tooling integration with Angular Framework. Kostas, I don't know if you want to take any question now or proceed with the coding session.
We have one question, but I think we can answer that at the end of the demo. Let's have enough time to see the demo and we'll answer questions later.
Cool. Okay. All right. Share. Kostas, can you confirm that you see my terminal?
I see your terminal. We see your terminal. It's a little bit. You need to zoom on and
zoom it more.
Yeah. It shows like really. The font size is really small.
Okay.
And I don't know. Are you sharing the screen or a single like?
I share a single portion because I have a very large screen. Do you think this is the reason that it doesn't look well?
I think it. Yeah, I think it behaves like a little bit strangely. Right now you zoomed and we can't seem to see the.
Can you see my page now? Is it better?
Yes.
Is it better now?
I think it's better now. Yes. And when you go into the web page or the terminal, maybe just zoom in a bit, or VS Code. So VS Code, you can just zoom in with Control and plus.
All right. So I will start. I don't know if I can zoom with the terminal. How?
Are you using the VS Code terminal?
No, I will use the VS Code better. I think it's better.
So if you zoom on VS Code, everything will zoom in. So
yeah, I know VS Code is better than the raw terminal of.
So
is it okay?
I think right now, yes. I think we're okay.
All right. I should not use a Windows terminal again. All right. So, first of all, The code that I will show to you, it's in my GitHub profile. You can go to github.com/Bampakos/Angular SHA workshop. I will share it together with the slides later. But if you want to go now and check it out, that's okay. And I will try now to, we will do live coding for this project. This is the finished project, right? And I can show it to you. It's, oops, come on. Okay. This is the application that we're going to build. It is a list of countries. It communicates with the REST countries API, and by default, it displays the European countries because of, I chose this because we have Euro in the football, so it's a good choice. And I have also created a search box where you can search for other countries, irrespectively of the European region, right? So by default, the application displays all European countries, and then you can search for another country outside Europe, for example, Colombia. So let's start. First, we must install the Angular CLI. So we use the npm install, as we saw in the slides. We pass the -G option to install it globally in our application. And we pass the name of the npm package, which is @angular/CLI. All Angular libraries have the prefix @Angular. Let me open my notes also. Oops, sorry. I'm so sorry about that. We're waiting to install the Angular CLI. I have already installed it, but it needs to go to the npm registry and check the latest version.
Do you have any experience with Yarn, Aris?
I use it only when I contribute to the Angular framework, because the Angular team uses Yarn, but I haven't used it, no. I don't know, I'm a fan of npm. I don't know why, maybe because of the old days, you know. But yeah, Yarn, I think it's faster. All right, so now we can start create our application. The Angular CLI contains an executable which is called ng. So every command that you want to create you want to run with Angular CLI, you run ng and then the appropriate command. For example, build test, as I said before. The command for creating a new application is new, ng new, the name of the application, my app, and then I pass the defaults option. Or maybe I will not pass the default options. Let's see it without defaults. All right, first it asks me if I want to add Angular routing for in-app navigations. I don't want it, so I accept the default answer, which is no. Then it asks me which CSS format I would like to have in my application. The four supported ones are CSS, SCSS, SAS, and less. We will go with the CSS, which is the simpler one. Come on, enter. What? Let me see. Oh, yes, I have it already. I need to give a different name. Let's say it's a app. If I used the -- default options, it will not make these questions to me and will accept the default values. So now the Angular CLI scaffolds the Angular application for me. Everything, all the structure, all the files that it needs to build, test, and generate all the files will do. Angular CLI will do it for me. I don't do anything. I will just dive in and start writing code. If you want to check out more Angular CLI commands, you can check out the angular.io/CLI URL, which contains all the supported commands. The first time that you create an application, it takes some time because it installs, it creates the folder structure, and it also installs all the necessary packages that you see.
I see that you have two Angular related extensions, right, on your VS Code. I see on the left there are two icons.
Good point, Kostas. I have put these extensions inside the GitHub repository that you will, if you download it, you will get these extensions also. So when you open the repository, the Visual Studio Code will prompt you to install the recommended extensions that I have put there for you. So it will automatically install it also for you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I see one by John Papa, Angular Essentials, and the Path Intelligence. Okay.
Yeah, the Angular Essentials is, I think, the only must-have Angular. It is the Angular extension that every Angular developer should have in their toolchain.
Okay.
Thanks for reminding me of this, Kostas.
Thank you too. I didn't know that you could create these extensions JSON and supply a list of suggested extensions along with your GitHub. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, Visual Studio Code has these features that it unveils the true power of it. This is the power of Visual Studio Code.
And to say to our viewers that VS Code is created using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So it's actually a web application based on Electron.js that Aris was mentioning earlier. So what you are looking when you're working with VS Code or right now is a browser, and all the things that you see on the editor is just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, which is amazing, I think.
Yeah. You can also see the actual source code. It has developer tools because it is an Electron window, so you can press F12 and go to the actual source code of Visual Studio Code. And fun fact is that they develop Visual Studio Code using Visual Studio Code.
Yeah.
Okay, installation has completed. Let's open our application in code. Yeah, I have already opened it. That's okay. So here is a structure that I see in an Angular application. This is the default structure. I have 3 tsconfig.json files. Remember, Angular is written in TypeScript. TypeScript needs to be compiled into JavaScript. Browsers that do not understand TypeScript. So we need to have these configurations, each one for a different purpose, the tsconfig.json, and this configuration tells the TypeScript compiler how to compile our application and emit JavaScript files. Because browsers, as I said, do not understand TypeScript. Until now, in 2021, we don't know in 10 years. Then we have the package.json which, as you can see here in the dependencies section, it contains all the applications. Contains all the applications. What is it? Yeah, and this is the forms that I was talking about, or the common one contains the HTTP client that we're going to use. These are all the libraries that you use to create a minimum JavaScript application, a minimum Angular application. If you don't use any of this in your code, that's okay. Your application will not grow because it will not use it. Then we have the karma.conf.js file, which is the configuration for running your unit tests. The angular.json, which is the configuration file for our Angular project. It actually guides the Angular CLI, how to build things, how to orchestrate all our application. It is the configuration file of our Angular application. And then, of course, we have the node modules, which contains all the libraries. And then in the source, we have the styles.css, which is the global styles of our application, global. The polyfills that contains some, is used when we want to support a feature in an old browser that is not supported by the Angular. Side note here, Angular 12 does not support Internet Explorer 11. Okay, so if you want to use something from Internet Explorer 11, you need to enable it inside the polyfills. The main.ts is the entry point of our application. Generally, we don't touch this. We leave it as it is. The index.html. All right. A fav icon here. Environments. I will talk about this later. Then we have the assets. The assets folder is used for when we want to have static assets in our application. Images, localizable files. What else? CSS that are from an external library and stuff like that. Everything that is static. We, as Angular developers, are concerned only with the app folder. The app folder contains our source code. And as you can see here, it contains, by default, 5 files. The app.module, which is the main module of the application, because, as I said, every application has one component at the top of the tree, which is called app component, and one module at the top, which is the main module. So we have the main module, which is the app.module.ts, and then we have 4 files that are concerned with the app component. The .ts file, which is the TypeScript class of our component, the CSS, which is the CSS specific scoped for that component, the HTML, which is the template of our component, and the spec.ts file, which is the unit test. So as you can understand, one component has 4 files: the TypeScript class, the template HTML, the CSS file, and the unit test file. All right, let's run it. To run our application, we use again the Angular CLI, the ng, and we pass the command serve. Now this will start an internal web server, and it will serve our application in a specific URL address. Now it compiles our TypeScript code, it converts it into JavaScript, and then it will start the web server so that we can see our application. The first time that we run the application may be a bit slow because it is the first time that compiles all these assets. So we can see here that it has started the Angular Live development server on localhost 4200. If we open our browser, you can see that it has created a template application for us with some content. And this is actually a skeleton application. Now, this is an indication that our application works okay. Our configuration is ready to start working on the project. Let's switch to the code. Oops. So, if we go to the app.component.html, oops. Okay, this is the app.component.html, the template of our main file. You can see here, no, sorry, if we go to the TypeScript class, this is maybe familiar from the slides before. Here it has a title property with a value. If I change that and say, welcome to Angular, the Angular CLI will, and save it, the Angular CLI will build our application and will refresh the browser. So if I go to the browser, you can see that it has changed this title here. So this is called change detection. The Angular application is very smart to understand that something has changed and it needs to depict our change inside the code. Our application will use Bootstrap, right? So let's install Bootstrap. Let me kill this terminal and open a new one. And let's install Bootstrap from npm. npm install Bootstrap. So this will install the Bootstrap library in our application. After we install it, we need to go to the global styles.css file here and import the Bootstrap library. So I will use the import syntax, this import syntax, to import all the necessary CSS files from Bootstrap. Oops. If I run my application again, you will see that the CSS has broken because I have already installed the styles of Bootstrap. So if I run ngserve again to run my application, all right. And go here, you can see that the CSS has broken because I have imported the Bootstrap styles. Now, as we said before, when we want to create a feature in our application, we need to create a module. Now, our application will consist of countries. It will have to do with countries. So we need a countries module. You can leave this terminal open and open a new one and run ng, which is the Angular CLI. And this time I will use the generate command or the G for shorthand. I prefer generate for first time. So ng generate, the type of Angular artifact that I want to create a module, and then the name, countries. So now it has created a folder countries inside my application and a file countries.module.ts. My countries module will contain a list of countries. So I need a component to visualize this list of countries. So I use the ng command, the generate, but this time I will say component. And the name of the component, which will be country list, and then I need to say in which module I want this component to group by. So my module is countries. And because I want all the country related stuff to be inside the countries folder, I need to set also the path. So /app/countries. If you don't want to write all this wide command, this length of the command, you can just go inside the countries folder, which is what I prefer. And run the ngGenerate component without the extra options. Country-list. Now this command has created inside the countries folder another folder, country-list, which is the name of the component. Inside that, I have the 4 files that we were talking about later: the TypeScript class, the HTML, the CSS, and the unit test file. So I want, by default, the HTML contains this paragraph element, country list. So let's see how we can display this in our main page. My main module is the app module. And the module that contains my component is the countries. So I need to connect them somehow. How can I do this? The countries module first must indicate to other modules that it exports the country list component. So I can open the module file. I can go to the decorator and say that this module will export the country list component class. Automatically, when someone imports this module, it will also get the country list component by default. So I can then go to the app module and say, okay, you need the countries module, you need to import the countries module. So I can write countries module. Can you see that I have IntelliSense? Now this IntelliSense is because of the extensions that Constance mentioned. It's an extension called Angular Language Service, which is inside this pack that I have put there for you. And it contains all these goodies about IntelliSense and other stuff. So when I import the countries module, it also defines it on the top, because when you import something, you need to define from where you imported the path. Okay, I import countries module. Let's go to the country list component. A component has 3 properties. The selector, which is the tag of the HTML tag of the component, how we write it in the HTML file. The template URL, which points to the template file of the component, and the style URLs, which points to the CSS file of the component. So if I want to use the country list component in my application, I must go to the app component, remove all of this, and just add the selector. But I couldn't do this if I haven't done this exports and imports sequence. Okay, so if you want to use something from another module, you just need to export it from the other module and import it into your own module. Now, if I serve my application now,
isn't it already serving from the other terminal?
Oh, yes, correct. You got me. Yes, it already serves the application. So we can, hopefully we can see it. No, we can't. Why is that? Oh yeah, I haven't saved it. I haven't saved this file. So you can see that the template, the content of the template of the country list component has appeared inside the main component. So we need to display a list of countries. First, we need an interface for the country that contains the properties of each country. So I open a new terminal. I go inside the countries folder and I generate with ng an interface this time. When we want to work with data in Angular applications, we prefer interface over class because class needs to be instantiated, especially when we want to work with HTTP data. So I create an interface which is called country. And I will put the following properties inside it. Here it is. I will put these properties. Okay, so I have a country interface with these properties that I will display at the end in my HTML. All right. We have the interface. Now we need to define the HTTP endpoint that we are going to use. I told you before that we have a folder called environments. In Angular, you can have many environments that you can run your application. You may have the development environment, which is the default one, the environment.ts, a staging environment where you want to test your application, and the production environment, which is the environment.prod. Angular CLI creates these two for us by default, the development and the production. If I open the development, you can see that it exports an object with a property production false, and the production has it set to true. So here, I will define the URL of the HTTP endpoint. Let me find it in my notes. Okay. And it is this one. Oh, sorry. It's this one. And we need to copy the same thing into the prod file because Angular knows in which environment you are running, development or production, and uses the appropriate file. So we need our environment object must have the same structure in both files. Okay. So we have added the environment API, the API URL. Now we need to import the HTTP client module. We go to the app.module and we import the HTTP client module. Now this class, this module must be imported from an Angular library, which is called /HTTP. Right, so we need this module to start working with HTTP endpoints. Now we want to work, we need to communicate with HTTP, so we need a service. We use the CLI once more, the generate command, and we pass the keyword service. And we give a name to our service, which is called countries. Sorry. Countries. Okay. All right. If we go to the countries folder now, we have the country list component, the module, the service that we created, and the interface. We open the service. Now, this is an Angular service. Before start working with HTTP, we need to import another service from the HTTP client module, which is called HTTP service, HTTP client, which is the actual client. So we open the constructor and we say private HTTP HTTP client. Now, I have used the constructor to define the service. I didn't wrote var const HTTP equals new HTTP client. Why? Because the Angular injector, the Angular injection mechanism knows that when I put another service in the constructor, then it will know to create an instance and bring it to me. So I don't have to do anything to create a service. I just need to ask it by defining it in the constructor. Then we will create a method which is called get euro countries, get euro. And inside here, we will make the actual call to the HTTP. Now, we have already created the interface. Generally in Angular, we need to be type safe. So we need to add types to everything, even to the return type of one method. So here, we will say that the get euro method returns an observable of country. And not only country, but an array of country, right? Generally, all HTTP calls in Angular application are observables. Observable is a fundamental characteristic of reactive programming. So you can go to the angular.io or the Ngrx.js documentation to get a glimpse of what it is about. Now we must only say that it is an observable and we need to define it as is. Inside the observable, we pass the type of data that the HTTP returns. We have already created the interface here, and we know that the HTTP endpoint will return this structure of data. So we can define it in the observable. And then we will start using the HTTP client and call the get method. Now here, again, I need to pass the type so that I am sure that nothing will go wrong. And inside the get method, I just pass the API URL that I declared inside my environment. What's going on here? Let me see. Oh, yes, I need to return also. So I have a method that will go to the HTTP and return some data for me. Let's wire it up into the component. If I go to my component, country list. Now I want to use a country service. And how do we use a service? We need to ask it from the dependency injection. How? We declare it inside the constructor. So private countries service. And then I create a private method, which is called get countries. That will use the method get euro from the country service. Now here, I need to declare a variable, which is called countries, that will hold my data. So I say countries, which is of country type, and I initialize it to an empty string, to an empty array. So when I call the get euro method, I need to call the subscribe method of this. The subscribe method is part of the observable that we saw before. If you don't subscribe, it will not make the HTTP call. So I subscribe, and the result data will be a list of countries. So I can assign my local countries to the data. And this get countries, I need to call it inside the ngOn init so that the application will go and fetch data when the component initializes. The ngOn init is part of the lifecycle of the component, is a lifecycle hook event, we call it, and it is called when our component is initialized. So I want to get the countries when my component initializes. my TypeScript class is ready. Now I need to wire it up with my HTML. My HTML is empty. So now, let me get my snippets. Okay. So here we are just creating the Bootstrap grid, the Bootstrap a list of cards. Okay, I will show you the really important topics. Here we use this syntax to iterate over the local countries property and get a country object from each one. Then we can use the country object, we can use the properties of each one. For example, if we want to display the name, we can say two braces, we can say country.name inside the two braces. This syntax, what will do? It will read the name of the country and will convert it to text. So this is called interpolation. The same with the code of the country, the region. Here we are taking a slightly different approach to create the Wikipedia URL from the country name. And this one is used to display the flag, the image flag, the flag of the country as an image. These square brackets are called one-way binding. And what it does, it actually binds the flag, the value of the flag property in the source attribute of the image. So if I run this, actually I'm running it. If I go to my application, you can see that it has displayed all the countries. Okay, let's make now the search button. Okay, to create the search button, we will create first, let me see. Okay, first we need to, I will create HTML. Okay, let's go with HTML. This is the HTML for my nodes. Okay, so what the HTML does, it uses this special syntax, which is called ng model. And you can see that it is inside parentheses and outside it has square brackets. This syntax is called banana in a box. I know it's crazy, but it's like have a banana, which is the back, which is the parentheses inside the box, which are the square brackets. With this way, you can declare a variable inside your TypeScript class, which is called search text, and bind it two-way with an input. So when you write your input, the search text is updated with the value. And when you update the value, the value of the search text property from the TypeScript, it will reflect the change to the input. So it is two-way. On the contrary, this is one way. This is, I would like to show you this difference. Okay, so first, let's create the search text property. I go to the TypeScript class, I create the search text property, which is string and initialized to empty. Now, you see, I haven't used the public keyword at all. It is supposed, by default, when we don't use it, it is public. And we must always remember that the template file can only communicate with public variables or public methods. If something is private, like this one, like this get countries, it will not be able to show it, to use it in the template. Okay, so we have used the search text. We declared it. We saved it.
Aris, may I add something on the TypeScript file? So just for the viewers that are currently not using or not familiar with TypeScript, we see a lot of like new things if you come from plain JavaScript, like private, public, void, the interfaces. So these are the extra stuff that TypeScript gives us. But if you are not familiar with TypeScript, I must say right now that you can write and you can work with Angular with plain JavaScript. So you can write the same thing without this private and this void, which is useful. It's there for a purpose. But if you feel comfortable starting to work with Angular and with plain JavaScript, you can do that. And you can move on as the next step on and using the extra TypeScript things. So just a note that you can also use plain JavaScript to work on these components. For beginners, I want to know this for beginners that may be intimidated a little bit about this extra TypeScript static typing and the new stuff.
Cool, yeah.
Thank you.
So now I want to use this engine model, right? So that I can write inside the input and the value can be reflected inside my TypeScript class. For this engine model, I need to import another Angular module, which is called Forms module. Okay, so I go here into the countries module and say Forms module. You may have noticed that I import the Forms module inside the countries, but the HTTP client module inside the app, inside the main application module. Why? Because the HTTP client module must be imported only once in my application. But the Forms module can be imported more than one times. It depends on our needs. If we had another module that needs ng model, then I can import Forms module straight away. So I import Forms module, and now this error that I had before has been vanished. The next thing that I need to do is create the method that, let's see the template. So I have this input here and this button. So I need to do I need to do the following: write something, click the go button, and then go to the HTTP API and filter some data and return it. So I need an event. First, let's create the service method that will go to the HTTP API. So we say that it is search, yeah? The return type is the same as before, because again, we're working with countries. So sorry about that. Again, we will use the get method from the HTTP with the same exact type. The difference is the URL. The URL is environment.api URL plus, let me find it because I don't remember it by heart, plus name, plus name, come on, plus the search term, which I will pass in the search method. So here I will have the search term. This term will be from the input text box, and I will also pass it in my HTTP call. Possibly I could write it like this using the template, template string literal. All right, I created the search method. Now I need to communicate it with my TypeScript class. I go to the TypeScript class and create a method, find countries, right? That communicates with the method in my service. So this dot country service dot search I will pass something here, dot subscribe, again the same. Now, inside the search method, I will pass the value from the text. So this method, find countries, will also have a search term. Search term. I created the service method. I created the component method. Now I need to connect the component method with my HTML. So I go to the HTML, I go to the button, and I want to say that if you click the button, call the find countries method. Now buttons have a special syntax, which is called event binding. And it is written, oh, so sorry. We don't need this one because we have already defined the search text. So sorry about that. So the buttons, Angular has a special syntax for events, which is called event binding, and it uses parentheses instead of square brackets. So here, essentially, we say that if the click event, the native click event, the HTML click event is fired on this button, call the find countries. So if everything works well, and I type call and go press the go, nothing happens. Why is that? Okay, there was a small delay. Cool. So I have also filtering in my application. Alternatively, if you check out my GitHub repository, you will see that I have also this event, this special event inside the input. This event actually says that if you press in the input box, call the find countries. It's like clicking on the button, the same. So if I go here and run call and press enter, come on, let's go. Okay, here it is. The last part is I want this application to deploy it in my repository. There is a library which is called Angular Cli GitHub Pages that I can use. Let me stop everything. All right. Okay. I can use again the Angular Cli, the ng command, and this time I will use the add. The add command allows you to add third-party libraries inside your application without configuring all the parts by yourself. So if I give it the name of the library that I want to use, which is this one, Angular-CLI-GH pages, and execute this, then it will ask me if I want to proceed. Yes, of course. I press no, sorry about that. This is the problems of the live coding. Yes. It will install the application, the library, and then I will need to execute only one command to deploy it to my GitHub profile.
Wow, we need something like this in React.
There is also the same, a similar library for Firebase. You say ng add Angular-Firebase, and then one command to deploy it. Of course, you need to log in with Firebase there. And then I can run, now that is installed, I can run ng deploy this time, which is the command for deploying something, passing the href of my application, which is the the name after my GitHub profile, and then saying SHA app. I don't know if it works now because I don't have this project in my GitHub profile, but let's see. As we speak now, also I'm uploading the slides so that we can put it in the chat, Kostas.
Yes.
Before we end.
Let me. For the question by Sheriff, the recording will be uploaded on our YouTube channel. I'm just searching for the link to send you our channel. So.
Oh yes, okay. It fails. The command fails because I don't have the repository. I don't have a repository that matches my application. But if I had this repository, then it will upload it into my account. Yeah, so let me switch to my slides because I don't have anything related to code that I would like to show you. Costa, should I switch to the slides or should I leave it here and take some questions? What do you think?
I think we should take some questions since they can, I mean, everybody can check the repository, clone it and check, test their application locally and then also upload it on a repository that they can create. We have a few questions, so I guess, yes, we can like answer some of them.
Kostas, how can I'm looking for an option to make you host.
No, you don't need.
Okay.
It's
all right.
It's okay. You're a co-host, I'm a host, so.
All right. Yeah, I would like to say that if you go to the repository and clone it and run npm install or follow the guides on the README, then you will have the application up and running in no time.
Mm-hmm. I've already shared the GitHub repo URL. I'm going to once again share the demo. So you can grab the GitHub repo URL. You can clone it locally, or you can fork it so that you can host it on GitHub pages. And after you clone it, you can run npm install, and then the ngserve, I guess, just to run the application. Maybe I think we can add the npm install on the README on the repo, just to remind the users that they.
I think it's already there. No, it isn't.
Sorry.
I think it's already there.
ngserve. No, it doesn't mention the npm install, but. Okay.
I also put the slides in the chat.
Oh, great. So
if anyone wants to connect with me, you can find me on Twitter at Bampakos or on LinkedIn, Aristeidis Bampakos. I would be happy to answer any questions that you have. My intention today was not so much to teach you Angular, because Angular is a big chapter. Okay, we need half a day to get something good. But I would like to show you how easy and quick it is to get up and running or in other words, onboarding with an Angular application.
Yes, that was perfect. Let's go through some questions. Okay, one question was about which one pillar should one use to set up a database connection factory? So I guess the question relates to how we can create a connection to a database, I guess, through Angular, or if there is some pattern or some module or some...
You can connect directly to database, so you need a backend server, an API, and the Angular application will be responsible to communicate with this API through HTTP, through services, and especially through the HTTP client that I demonstrated today. So if you have a CRUD application, the CRUD is create, read, update, delete. What I would do, I would create a service with 4 methods: add, edit, add, update, delete, and add, update, delete. Yeah. And then in each method, I will put the appropriate HTTP call. And this would be my HTTP communication wrapper.
So thank you. So there's a question. You mentioned something about localization. I gave a short answer about what localization is. But I think Martinen is really interested to know more about translation. So I guess just to stick with Angular, is there any particular module or way to translate websites or do localization in
Yeah, I'm just, I will redirect you to the Angular.io, which is my favorite resource about localization and how and which library should you use for localizing. Right now, localization is a big topic in Angular. There is no translation runtime. You can't make translation runtime by your own using a built-in mechanism of Angular. You need to implement your own or use a third-party library, for example, Transloco or Ngrx Translate.
Another question by Chetin, how can we split our HTML code in one component? For example, a separate form HTML in form HTML. I can...
You can create separate components for that. So ideally, what if I was in a production environment, I would create 2 components. One for the search input and the button, and another for the list. And I would make these 2 components communicate each other through their public interface.
And I think in your application, you're already using the countries list component inside the app component. So I guess, Chetin, you can check to see the code, how the country list is imported and used in the app component HTML, the app country list. So I will send just a quick link to the repo code. So this is the app component HTML. We are using, we're displaying app country list, and the app country list is, I think, imported in the app module, if I'm correct, Aris.
The countries module is imported in the app module. Actually, the main module of the Angular application, which we call app module, its purpose is just to orchestrate things. For example, you develop a customer management application. You have customers, orders, products. So you create 3 modules for each one and import them inside the app module in the main, so that the application can know about these modules. Why do we have separate modules? Because we may have a separate team, one team that works in the orders, another team that works in the customers. So this separation of concerns allows us to work independently of the others.
So I guess you should become familiar with the ng-generate component, and then start breaking up your application in different components, importing them and using them. There's another question. Let's have one last question, I guess, from Martinian. Can we create a folder named models to put all our app models? Is this a good practice?
Absolutely. This is what I follow. Inside, what I do is I create a core module, a core folder inside my folder structure, and then I put models or services that are core. For example, if you have a service that displays if you want to create a wrapper service over the local storage of the browser, okay, this service you want to be available in all the modules of your application. So what do? You create a folder core and you put this service inside, and if you have the modules. In my GitHub profile, I have another project which is called Angular Heroes. It showcases how it communicates with the Marvel Heroes API. And there, the structure uses modules and services and core and stuff like that. Thanks, Kostas.
Yeah, you can check the repository. There is a source app core, and you can follow the structure.
My intention someday was to convert this repository with React and Vue. This was my intention, to create something in 3 different frameworks, but I don't have time to do it.
Okay, let's do it in an upcoming webinar. We can work on this. Yes, and see how these frameworks work, in comparison, let's say. Okay, I think we are ready to wrap up. Thank you very much, Aris, for being here with us for so many years. And thank you for this really, really insightful and really cool introduction to Angular. Of course, we need to dive more into the Angular documentation, but it was really quite an impressive introductory app. And I think that the next thing now is to also get the football matches scores from an API and connect them with the countries.
I wanted to do something similar, but I didn't have time. So I preferred REST countries because I know that REST countries is in Social Hackers Academy something, unique. Yeah. I would like also to thank you about the opportunity to come and talk about Angular and to see you again all in the Social Hackers Academy. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. Thanks to everyone for attending, for being here, for your questions. Please follow us on our social media so that you can learn more about our upcoming webinars. I will send you our events page where you can see some really nice upcoming events. There's a really nice event coming on the 30th of June, which is a nice, I guess, addition to today's seminar, because we can use serverless functions and connect our web apps with databases. So if you learn about serverless functions, you can connect your Angular apps with the serverless functions and then through that to a database or other service. So it's really important. Please check our YouTube channel. We make all the previous webinars we have available for you. It's all public. So just check our YouTube channel and follow us on our social media. If you have any questions, you can ask them. And once again, thank you, Aristeidis, and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for sharing with us your knowledge. It was a pleasure to have you as part of the Hack the Tech Industry podcast. You can join our live event every last Wednesday of the month, remember, and check our social media to get to know more about our coming events.